Welcome back, warriors, to your favorite military history channel, the place where strategy, geopolitics, and battlefield brilliance come alive. Friends, I hope you've been following all the videos closely, and I'm sure many of you have already gone through chapter 1 of the book. Those who have subscribed to our PDF notes, you've probably noticed how we've broken down every event with clean visuals, maps, and graphs, all to make your preparation smoother and sharper. Today, we're going to do something even more exciting. We're going to look at some thought-provoking questions from Chapter 1, questions that not only challenge your understanding, but are the exact type you can expect in your exam. Now, I've gone through previous year's patterns. And yes, this military battle has appeared before. But here's the twist. This time, what really matters is the relevance of this battle to unrestricted warfare. That's the game changer. That's the edge you need. And for everyone who has subscribed to our notes, don't worry, your PDFs will reach you. And for those who are studying from other books or notes, relax, this full video will stay available for you. Before we begin, do this. Pause the video for a moment. Try to connect everything you've studied in Chapter 1. Think deeply. Try answering the upcoming questions on your own. This self-assessment will show you exactly where you stand. Alright, warriors, let's begin. Question number 1. Question 1, a powerful one. It states, Jawaharlal Nehru's approach to China between 1950 and 1959 evolved from idealistic belief in Panchsheel to reluctant strategic awakening after the Longju incident. We have 3 parts to discuss. A. How did Nehru's ideological beliefs and diplomatic worldview shape India's early China policy? B. What were the major miscalculations in assessing China's intentions in Tibet and along the northern frontier? C. In what ways did the Longju and Khenzemane incidents force a strategic shift? Friends, this is a 3-part analytical question. It expects students to A. Explain how Nehru's thinking shaped India's China policy from 1950 to 1954. This focuses on his beliefs, ideology, and assumptions. B. Identify India's incorrect assessments of China during 1950 to 1957. Here students must mention Tibet, Aksai Chin, Chinese road building, warnings, etc. C. Explain how the Longju and Khenzemane border incidents changed India's behavior in 1959. This part wants a shift from idealism to strategic realism. The question is not asking for a narrative timeline, it wants causes, misjudgments, policy shifts, evidence from the chapter. Alright friends, as always, we're going to answer every part of this question clearly, logically, and just the way your exam expects. And yes, as I promised, we will also connect each answer to the principles of unrestricted warfare, because that is exactly where your conceptual mastery lies. Host. So friends, let's begin with part A of question 1. First, let us look at Nehru's ideological beliefs and diplomatic worldview. Let's begin with part A. Nehru, at this stage, was driven by idealism, diplomacy, and the belief that Asia must rise peacefully after centuries of colonialism. 1. Asian solidarity and idealism. Nehru saw China as a natural Asian partner, promoted the slogan Himmatsinhji Bhai Bhai, assumed China shared India's peaceful post-colonial vision. 2. Faith in diplomacy over force. His worldview was shaped by non-alignment and Gandhian non-violence. Panchsheel wasn't seen as a negotiation tool, but as a moral guarantee. Military capability took a back seat. 3. Underestimation of military power. Saw Pakistan, not China, as the real security threat. Ignored clear indicators of China's plans for Tibet. Moving next, let's look at the next part of the question, which is about major miscalculations about China's intentions. And this is where the cracks start showing. 1. Misreading China's intent in Tibet. Nehru assumed China would keep limited suzerainty. But China moved for full military occupation, a tectonic shift. India overlooked Tibet's role as a crucial buffer zone. 2. Neglecting China's military build-up. Strategic consequences of Chinese garrisons were ignored. The G219 highway, right through Aksai Chin, went unnoticed for years. 3. Dismissing intelligence warnings. Reports warned of Chinese aggression as early as 1959 to 61. Patrolling, road construction, altered maps. All were downplayed. 4. Overconfidence in treaties. Nehru assumed China would honor the McMahon Line and Panchsheel. But China never accepted the border and kept advancing its claims. Moving on to the next part of the question. C. Impact of the Longju and Khenzemane incidents. This is where idealism collapses and reality hits. 1. Collapse of the Panchsheel illusion. Longju was the first undeniable proof of China's hostility. Nehru had to finally acknowledge, yes, we have a border dispute. 2. Shift toward military posture. Control of NEFA moved from the Assam Rifles to the Indian Army. A clear signal. Diplomacy alone was no longer enough. 3. Strategic awakening. Parliament and public became aware of Chinese incursions. India began forward deployment and early defensive planning. 4. China sets the tempo. India reacts. China dictated escalation. India only responded. The shift from idealistic belief, reluctant realism had begun. Friends, to really strengthen your answer and stand out in the exam, you must always support your conclusion with the relevance of unrestricted warfare. So let's quickly connect this part to the concept we studied. Chapter: The Weapons Revolution, which invariably comes first. China's method: quietly built the G219 highway, fortified Tibet with posts, logistics hubs, and all-weather roads, modernized the PLA before any confrontation. India's error: focused mainly on Pakistan, ignored gradual Chinese military consolidation, relied on diplomacy instead of deterrence. Lesson: in UW, preparation begins long before visible conflict. China used indirect, pre-war military build-up to change the balance, a principle India failed to recognize. Chapter: Seeking Rules of Victory. The force moves away from the point of the enemy's attack. China's method: avoided major battles, used patrols, roads, and new posts to shift ground reality step by step, changed facts on the ground without firing a shot. India's error: expected treaty compliance, Panchsheel, stayed reactive instead of shaping the situation, allowed China to control the tempo and direction of escalation. Lesson: true victory in modern strategy comes through indirect pressure, not direct confrontation. China used slow, calculated moves to force India to respond on its terms. So friends, adding this unrestricted warfare angle at the end of your answer will show the examiner that you understand the deeper strategic logic behind each event. This is how you stand out. Friends, if you're able to answer this question using whichever notes you're currently studying from, then you're on the right track. That means your material is solid. But if you're not able to think on these lines, if these perspectives aren't striking you, then friends, our honest advice is start making your own crisp notes immediately. Because when the exam is just one night away, only sharp, clear, condensed notes will save you. And that's exactly why our team created these notes, simple, visual, and easy to revise, even at the last minute. Every chapter in our notes ends with a clean, exam-ready section linking the events to unrestricted warfare, so you understand not just what happened, but why it matters strategically. So friends, if you want to book the PDF copy of our notes, just call the number given in the description below. Join the hundreds of students already using these notes and prepare smarter, not harder. Alright friends, moving on to question number 2, a very important one. This question tells us exactly how India reacted after China occupied Tibet and why those early warnings were ignored. Question number 2 states, India's response to China's occupation of Tibet triggered several official assessments, including the Himmatsinhji Committee and the Kulwant Singh Committee. Analyze A. The strategic concerns and circumstances that led to the formation of these committees. B. The major findings regarding India's military, administrative, and logistical vulnerabilities along the northern border. C. The reasons why the recommendations were ignored or inadequately implemented, especially in the years preceding 1959. Now let's break this down part by part. Part A. Strategic concerns behind the formation of the committees. Friends, let's begin with Part A. These committees weren't created casually. They were formed because India suddenly found itself facing a totally new strategic reality. 1. Collapse of Tibet as a protective buffer. China's 1950 invasion ended Tibet's autonomy. PLA troops now stood directly across India's frontiers, NEFA and Ladakh. 2. Strategic vacuum on the northern frontier. No military plan. No administrative presence. No diplomatic clarity. Nehru's government was initially unsure how to respond. 3. Escalating Chinese military posture. PLA's rapid advance to Chando. Consolidation across Tibet. Infiltration, propaganda, and influence operations in NEFA. 4. Senior leadership warnings. B.N. Malik warned of inevitable Chinese aggression. Sardar Patel's 1950 letter called China a potential enemy and demanded a strategic review. 5. Need for immediate border assessment. India urgently needed clarity on troop strength, logistics and mobility, communication gaps, administrative reach. This led to the creation of A. Himmatsinhji Committee, 1950. B. Kulwant Singh Committee, 1953. Now that we know why these committees were formed, let's move smoothly to Part B. What exactly did they find? What weaknesses did they expose along India's northern frontier? Part B. Major findings: India's military, administrative, and logistical vulnerabilities. 1. Military vulnerabilities. A. Extremely thin deployment. NEFA defended by a few Assam Rifles battalions over huge terrain. Ladakh had just one battalion at Karu. B. Zero high-altitude capability. Troops lacked winter clothing, equipment, acclimatization, and mountain warfare training. General Cariappa clearly stated India couldn't intervene in Tibet militarily. C. Broken command structure. Assam Rifles under Mia instead of Army Zero Unified Command. No single strategic plan for the northern border. 2. Administrative vulnerabilities. A. Minimal Indian presence in NEFA. Entire valleys, Singh, Lohit, Subansiri, barely administered. Tribal areas vulnerable to Chinese-Tibetan influence. Tagan murders a clear warning. B. Tawang under Tibetan authority until 1951. Tibetan Dzongpens collected taxes and governed the region. Only after Bob Khathing's bold expedition did Indian administration begin. 3. Logistical vulnerabilities. A. No border roads. No motorable roads to Tawang, Walong, Subansiri, or Aksai Chin. Troop movement slow and unsustainable. B. Weak communication network. Telegraph and wireless gaps everywhere. Many posts isolated. C. Poor air supply capability. Airfields inadequate. No structured mountain airlift planning. 4. Strategic forecast. Kulwant Singh Committee predicted a Chinese clash between 1959 to 61. Recommended stronger posts and rapid infrastructure development. So friends, now the big question. If these warnings were so clear, so accurate, why didn't India act on them? Let's move to Part C why recommendations were ignored or poorly implemented. 1. Nehru's idealistic foreign policy. Overconfidence in Panchsheel and Indo-Chinese friendship. China seen through an ideological, not strategic, lens. 2. Diplomacy over military thinking. Mia dominated border policy. Army's warnings dismissed as exaggeration. 3. Fear of provoking China. Strengthening posts was seen as an escalatory move. India avoided visible militarization. 4. Focus on domestic priorities. Industrialization took priority. Defense modernization seen as non-essential. 5. False sense of security from treaties. Panchsheel created the illusion of lasting peace. China's map aggression and G219 road ignored. 6. Bureaucratic inertia. Even approved expansions moved extremely slowly. No coordinated mechanism to implement recommendations. 7. Political distrust of the military. Civil leadership feared military assertiveness. Incidents like the Thimayya resignation reduced army's institutional influence. Friends, to gain an edge over others in the exam, don't forget to support your answer with insights from Unrestricted Warfare. Chapter: The Weapons Revolution, which invariably comes first. China's method: built G219 highway, fortified Tibet, modernized PLA quietly. India's error: ignored long-term Chinese build-up, focused mainly on Pakistan. Lesson: modern conflict begins before the shooting. China used indirect, pre-war build-up to change the balance. Chapter: The war gods phase has become indistinct. China's method: signed Panchsheel while expanding troops in Tibet. India's error: trusted diplomacy instead of building deterrence. Lesson: modern warfare hides behind peace. Strategic deception becomes a weapon. Alright friends, let's move to question number 3. One of the most fascinating and decisive moments in India's early Northeast history. The administrative integration of Tawang under Major Bob Khathing in 1951. Question 3 states, the administrative integration of Tawang under Major Bob Khathing in 1951 was a turning point in India's assertion of authority in NEFA. Examine A. The political background and Tibetan influence in the region prior to the operation. B. The planning, execution, and challenges faced by Khathing and the Assam Rifles during the operation. C. The diplomatic repercussions of the move, including Nehru's anger and Tibet's response. Let's start with first part of the question A. Political background and Tibetan influence before the operation. Friends, before India took control, Tawang was practically a Tibetan outpost, politically, culturally, and administratively. 1. Tibetan control over Tawang. Tibetan Dzongpens exercised full authority. They collected taxes, commanded villages, and enforced their rule. Even during British times, as late as 1942, Tawang remained under Tibetan control because the British avoided confrontation. 2. Weak Indian presence. Despite the McMahon Line, 1914, placing Tawang in India, no Indian administrator was on the ground. Local Monpa population feared Tibetan reprisals due to earlier incidents. 3. Rising Chinese pressure in NEFA. Chinese influence operations increased in tribal belts. After PLA occupied Tibet in 1950, India recognized the urgency to secure Tawang. 4. Strategic concerns from Assam governor. Governor Jairamdas Doltram believed Tawang was India's weakest link. He requested immediate administrative integration before China exploited the vacuum. With this background in place, let's move to part B. The daring mission led by Major Bob Khathing that changed everything. B. Planning, execution and challenges of the operation. 1. Covert mandate. Major Bob Khathing was secretly summoned. Nehru was not informed. Operation kept off Delhi's radar. Task: establish Indian administration inside Tawang. 2. The march to Tawang. Khathing moved with 3 platoons of 5 Assam Rifles, led by Captain H.B. Limbu. They marched through harsh terrain, Dirang Dizong Sela Jang Tawang. 3. Resistance and terrain challenges. Monpas initially avoided contact. Tibetan officials resisted. Extreme cold, zero road infrastructure, almost non-existent communication. 4. Assertion of authority. On 9 February 1951, Khathing declared Indian administrative control. ordered Tibetan Dzongpens to stop collecting taxes and vacate the region. 5. Establishing governance. Created Assam Rifles presence. Toured villages, imposed a modest 5 rupee house tax. Conducted a flag march with 50 soldiers, which won local support. Now friends, the operation succeeded on the ground. But what happened diplomatically, especially with Nehru, is equally important. Let's move to part C. Diplomatic repercussions. 1. Nehru's anger. Nehru was furious once he discovered the operation was carried out without his permission. Delhi panicked and sent urgent stop messages. 2. Contradiction with Nehru's China policy. Khating's assertive action clashed with Nehru's Panchshilera belief in appeasing China. Nehru feared escalation and damage to India's peaceful image. 3. Tibetan response. Dzongpens were instructed by Lhasa to resist, but they had little support on the ground. Finally escorted out safely to Khenzemane by Khating's team. 4. Strategic outcome. India established full administrative control over NEFA up to the McMahon line. The operation prevented China from later claiming that Tawang had historically been under Tibetan and therefore Chinese administration. This single move by Khating closed a strategic loophole that China could have exploited decades later. Friends, to gain a strong edge in your exam, always link your answer to unrestricted warfare. Here's how Tawang fits into the UW framework. Chapter: The Weapons Revolution, which invariably comes first. China's method. Consolidated military control over Tibet early. Preparing long-term expansion. India's action. By securing Tawang early, India finally used administrative occupation as a preemptive move. Lesson: Control the ground before the conflict. Here, India briefly matched China's UW approach. Chapter: The war gods phase has become indistinct. China's method. Expansion through political pressure and military presence under a peaceful facade. India's action. Asserted sovereignty using administrative tools, not force. Lesson: Modern conflict is not just fought with armies. Power can be exercised through governance. Alright friends, let's move to question number 4, a pivotal moment in India's civil-military relations. This is the famous Thimayya, Krishna Menon confrontation of 1959, a moment that shaped India's defense preparedness for decades. Question 4 states, civil-military relations underwent acute stress in 1959, culminating in the Thimayya, Krishna Menon confrontation. Discuss. A. The context in which Nehru announced in Parliament that the army would take over responsibility for the NEFA border. B. General Thimayya's objections and his warnings regarding India's preparedness against China. C. The political handling and fallout of Thimayya's resignation episode and its long-term implications for India's defense decision-making. A. Context of Nehru's parliamentary announcement on NEFA. Let's begin with part A. The background here is extremely dramatic. The Longju and Khenzemane incidents brought India face-to-face with China's real intentions. 1. Trigger: Longju and Khenzemane incidents. August 1959. 7th August, Chinese forces pushed Assam Rifles from Khenzemane. 25th August, Chinese attacked the Indian post at Longju. These were the first direct military confrontations since Panchshil. 2. Public outrage after news leak. On 28th August 1959, newspapers exposed the Longju attack. Nehru could no longer maintain secrecy. The nation demanded answers. 3. Nehru's public admission of a crisis. For the first time, Nehru openly admitted there was a serious border dispute. Aksai Chin had been lost. China had built the G-19 highway through Indian territory. 4. Political need to look strong. Facing criticism, Nehru suddenly announced in Parliament that the army would take over NEFA, replacing the Assam Rifles. 5. A decision with no consultation. No discussion with the army. No discussion with Defense Ministry. General Thimayya was not even informed. This was a purely political announcement, not a strategic one. So that's the context. But what did General Thimayya think of this sudden political decision? Let's move to part B. General Thimayya's objections and warnings. Friends, General Thimayya was one of India's most respected soldiers, and he immediately saw the danger. 1. Army was simply not ready. No army deployment in any NEFA. Only one battalion in Ladakh. No roads, no logistics, no reserves. He warned Nehru India could not take on China without preparation. 2. India could not fight China conventionally. Thimayya told Nehru bluntly, China had more troops, better equipment, more aircraft, Soviet backing. India couldn't hope to match this directly. 3. Recommended an alternative strategy. Use small, mobile commando teams to strike Chinese supply lines. Fight conventionally only when Chinese forces reach the plains. A realistic, asymmetric defense plan. 4. Committee's warnings already ignored. Himmatsinhji Committee, Kulwant Singh Committee. Both predicted a China clash between 1959 to 61. Thimayya's warnings were the third alarm, again ignored. 5. Nehru's announcement was dangerous. Thimayya felt the PM had committed the army without preparation, undermined military planning, made India look like the aggressor if China reacted. So what happened next? This is where politics, personalities, and national security collided. Let's move to part C. Political handling, fallout, and long-term impact. 1. Menon's confrontation with Thimayya. Defense Minister Krishna Menon reprimanded Thimayya for meeting the PM directly. He warned of political consequences, a clear attack on military autonomy. 2. Thimayya's resignation, 31st August 1959. Frustrated and humiliated, Thimayya resigned. Nehru privately persuaded him to withdraw it. 3. Nehru's public undermining in Parliament. The next day, instead of supporting his army chief, Nehru downplayed the issue, dismissed the reasons as trivial, portrayed Thimayya as emotional and irresponsible. This shattered military morale. 4. Media manipulation. Thimayya's resignation was leaked intentionally. His withdrawal was deliberately delayed. This damaged the army's reputation. 5. Impact on civil-military relations. Army leadership lost influence in strategic matters. Bureaucrats tightened control over defense. Lieutenant General B.M. Kaul, close to Nehru, rose rapidly in influence. 6. Long-term damage. This episode created a system where military advice was ignored. Political dominance shaped defense decisions. Strategic warnings were sidelined. These weaknesses directly contributed to India's failures in 1962. Friends, to get an edge in your exam, always connect your answer to unrestricted warfare, because China's strategy fits perfectly into this framework. Chapter: Seeking Rules of Victory. China's method created situations where India always reacted, maintained initiative, controlled escalation. India's error: silenced its own military warnings instead of fixing vulnerabilities. Lesson: victory requires listening to professional military advice. Suppressing it leads to defeat. Chapter: 10,000 methods combined as one. China's method: integrated military, diplomatic, and intelligence tools. India's error: defense decisions dominated by political rivalries and bureaucracy. Lesson: modern strategy demands integration. Civil-military divide is a strategic weakness. Friends, with this we complete all the important questions from Chapter 1. We truly understand how valuable your time is. And that's exactly why we carefully select only the questions that really matter for your exam. And friends, here's a simple reality check. If you can attempt these questions confidently by referring to your older notes, that means your Chapter 1 preparation is moving in the right direction. But if you're struggling to think on these lines, or finding it hard to connect concepts? Then please take charge of your preparation. Start making your own crisp notes or study from notes that are genuinely exam-focused. And if you want to book our notes, carefully prepared by retired officers, simplified, visualized, and linked with Unrestricted Warfare for deeper understanding, just call the number given in the description. Remember friends, going in the right direction is far more important than finishing the whole book and still being unable to answer key questions. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Your support motivates us to bring even better content for you. See you in the next chapter, friends. Jai Hind.